Your patience on a rainy day like this. We are cramped house full. It's like being in a 747, jostling for space, but cozy. Um, I just wanted to preface this evening with a few words. The three gentlemen you will be hearing today are very special. They're not just special to me, but they're special to the Bengal Club. They're all three from the Bengal Club. And they've stayed with the idea of the book club, the idea of eco-criticism, which we're talking about every day, biodiversity, which we're talking about every day, long before people like Professor Deepesh Chakraborty from the University of Chicago were talking about it. They really have walked the talk. I'm very, very proud to say that we have Dr. Shundeep Chatterjee, who is, I think, the premier neurosurgeon nationally and internationally. We have Mr. Vivek Krishna, who's been in the tea industry, has many friends in this room today and in this city. And so welcome, Vivek. And a big warm welcome to Moloida, Mr. Molloy Roy, who's been in corporate Kolkata for many years. He's a writer, and we've stayed together with this book, which is An Elsewhere Place in the Library. He talks about Hazaribagh, and please do sit down. I don't think you'll find a place there, ma'am. Is there one? Wonderful, thank you. Good. So, to cut a long story short, as it would be, auspiciously, Shibunti, our librarian, will take me to task if I'm wrong. This is our third year. So we complete 3 years, September 2023, with the book club at the Bengal Club. And the person who was cheering for the book club is Dr. Shundeep Chatterjee. I'm extremely grateful I have an opportunity to thank him for making this possible today. I have one of our very strong team members, Ms. Anasuya Paul here. The other 5 are missing somewhere on vacation. And we also have Sunil Munshi here, whose claim to fame is that he brushes shoulders with his wife, Anju Munshi, who is also a very active and proactive book club member. Having said that, let me say that today's topic about going wild was sown on that first book club discussion when COVID was rampant and snapping at our heels, so to speak. And we began with, again, strangely enough, Peter Matheson's book, The Snow Leopard, about which you will see another avatar in the presentation by Mr. Vivek Krishna. So whether we are an Anthropocene century where we, beat our breasts and we say we're the best, we're the biggest, we're the most powerful of all creatures in the wild, or in civilization, the fact remains that we have really probably left too many footprints in places which are not in any way ours, do not belong to us. So in all their stories, each of them, I think, will share the pride of the indigene, the local who understands the connection between us and the creatures and Mother Nature. So without further ado, I wanted to share that with you. Thank you for coming in. Vivek, will you start the show? Thank you. Vivek, the floor is all yours. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. Happy that all of you are here this evening. as it started raining this morning, my heart sank thinking that it's going to be me presenting to myself. As a tea broker, I've done that all my life. Thank you. This was a.
It's on.
This was a journey we made to. This whole presentation is based on a journey we made to Ladakh earlier this year. It was a signal moment. My wife Brinda turned 70, and I told her that what better way to celebrate than going up to Ladakh. So she will say, you go off to the mountain. It's not really my scene. But eventually, I convinced her she didn't need to do any mountaineering. She didn't do any mountain climbing. But just to come up there, and we were not going to go too high. It should have been more than 13,000-14,000 feet at the outside, which is daunting enough for anybody who doesn't really go away. And it all worked out. We flew into Leh in the middle of February, and the photographs here, which you'll see today, is being taken largely by Brinda, myself. Most of the photographs were taken by my son-in-law Manoj, Brinda and myself, with smartphones and some cameras with long lenses. And so the exclusive shots that are in this are the result of some very, very generous photographers who have shared their work and permitted me to show them to you. They were Ahmad Imran and Sonam Stanzen from Leh, Morok Namgyal from the village of Pule, and of course Sujoy Das from Kolkata with us this evening. A big thank you to all of them for generously sharing their work with us today. Local Ladakhi photographers and spotters like Imran, Sonam and Morok, and many others who are not named, are responsible for almost all the award-winning photographs that come out of the mountains. And these have been largely obtained from camera traps, which they service. They keep going up to the ridges, setting the camera trap. They have to do it once a week in all weathers to get those beautiful photographs that one sees on Instagram, what you see on the awards that are won. And they seldom, if ever, get any acknowledgement of the fact that without them, none of those photographs would have been possible. So I'm happy to say that a lot of them are now coming out and being able to show some of their work. Imran, in fact, was supposed to come out with a film this year on the snow leopard, but I think it's been postponed now to maybe the first quarter of next year, and I hope it comes out with that. I've seen it myself. I've seen a preview of it, and his photography is outstanding. So just a little bit about Ladakh itself. Ladakh means land of high passes. So you don't have to say any more. Its population is around 3 lakhs. That's half of what the population of Bhutan is, where you can barely see a human being outside the cities. It's a density of about 4.6 people per square kilometer. It's rich in animal and plant life, but so far there's been no significant discovery of mineral wealth, thank goodness, except some gas and oil reserves and some thermal generation of power. Man has lived in the area since the Stone Ages. Knowing how difficult it is today, I wonder what it was like in Stone Ages being up there. And moving on to the second slide. This gives you an idea of how difficult it is to spot a snow leopard in the wild. It blends perfectly into the background. Here you see it standing out because this is a massively magnified photograph from the actual one that they actually shot itself. And as you can see in there, these big boulders, snow, ice, and he's pretty much at the top of the ridge that he's walking up to. So, M.R. O'Connor, writing in New York in 2018, said, "It's a majestic cat with fur the color of smoke." Snow leopards, which belong to the genus Panthera, inhabit some of the highest mountain ranges in the world, and their camouflage is so perfectly tuned that they appear ethereal, as though made from storm clouds. In these circumstances, one has to have a powerful scope or a very long lens, as sightings are made from anything between half a kilometer and up to 3 kilometers away. So, actually seeing a snow leopard is a miracle. And all the people who go up to the mountains to look for snow leopards, 99% of them will come back without seeing anything. And I think one of the things that people learn is, if you're going out in the wild, don't go expecting to see anything and you'll see lots of things. But if you say, go there and say, oh, I wasted so much money, I didn't see a snow leopard, well, you had a very poor life. This is an old snow leopard sitting on the rocks, which is its habitat. Obviously not very amused at being disturbed. This picture was taken by Mohammed Imran, and amongst many of the ones that we've taken, and one has to just take it all. The snow leopard, as Julie mentioned, Peter Matheson's account of his trip to the land of Dolko in Mustan, northern Nepal, won 2 National Book Awards, becoming both a naturalist and a spiritual classic. It overflows with his crystalline descriptions of animals and mountains. This is a shot of the Stopna monastery outside Leh, which was built about 700 years ago, and it depicts the typical architecture of this Trans-Himalayan region, influenced by Buddhism as it spread across Asia. We were able to take a quick shot of this dance, Tibetan dance taking place in the city of Leh, dancing in the main Buddhist temple, which conveys stories that have come down to them over the millennia, many linked with animals and spirits. Leh, the capital of Ladakh, is situated at 11,000 feet. So the moment you fly into Leh, you already need to get some acclimatization, otherwise you won't be able to leave the town at all. So we were lucky that the third day that we were in Leh, after a compulsory day lying in bed, you're not allowed to move at all, you just have to drink water and stay in bed, in order to avoid getting any kind of effect of altitude. A snow leopard was sighted at the village of Siam, which is about 35 minutes, 40 minutes outside Leh. It was so amazing because we didn't expect to see anything at all, not that close. Literally off the side of the road which goes down to Kargil. So it had quickly attracted a huge crowd of snow leopard enthusiasts, none of them who could believe their luck as well. All armed with huge lenses, some of them you can see. And there were about 30 or 40 of them in this crowd out there. Lots of foreigners. Some of them with spotting scopes. You can see me hiding in a very, using a spotting scope there. Their pictures were soon all over the internet. This animal sat on its kill just 100 meters away from us. But its beautiful camouflage ensured that we couldn't see it with the naked eye, even at such a close range. And it's only when we look through a scope and think that we said, wow, it's right there. Absolutely amazing. It's an old animal, you can see his face is a bit grizzled. And he was sitting, as I said, 100 meters outside the village, which normally a leopard will not do. It will not come down so close to humanity. They avoid humanity as far as possible. But he was obviously angry and he was lucky to have made a kill. The red color in the front is actually, he's peeled the skin off the ibex. You can see the horns of the ibex in the middle of the photograph. And he was sitting there. It was the temperature, it was about 10 o'clock in the morning when we got there. The temperature was around minus 11 degrees. He was panting because it was too hot for him. Literally. There's another shot of the same leopard. You see him looking more grizzled at the moment because his face is, and you can see the horn more. It's very much more obvious. Massive paws, as you can see. And That thing at the back is his tail. The tail is huge. It uses balance when he's running up and down the hills, when he's running. He has to run to catch with very agile animals. And here he's fending off two magpies who are trying to get a scrap or two out of him while he's not looking. Notice he's just glaring at them. So, this is a great start to our trip. And as Imran, who managed the trip for us, said, you know, you've seen one snow leopard, you're luckier than most people who come here, but I hope to see you maybe one or two more during your stay with us. Snow leopards have to make a kill at least once in 7 to 10 days to avoid starving to death. But hunting is hard and dangerous work. On an average, the odds are that a snow leopard is able to make a kill only once in 10 forays. So it is a very hard life for him. The animal therefore sits on its kill for up to a week and devours all he can eat of it to prevent other predators like wolves, wild dogs and birds from walking off with his hard-won meal. This is a view of the confluence of the Zanskar and the Indus River. The river Indus flows down northwest across Ladakh, following the line of the Himalayas, before making a sharp left turn to the south through the mountains toward its final destination in the Arabian Sea. The Zanskar River, on its part, flows directly north to its confluence with the Indus. The two rivers are of different colors. The blue of the Zanskar, which is largely snow and ice melt, and the brown, muddy, turbulent water of the Indus, which has already traveled halfway across Tibet to get to this point. And it's cut its way through what was the Sea of Tethys 70 million years ago, before the Himalayas came up, and then goes on its way down to the plains. These are the mountains en route to the village of Ule, where we stayed in a homestay for a week. It's Ule is situated at 13,000 feet, and we sort of round our way up. What is lovely about the present day Ladakh is there are roads virtually everywhere now. At the lower elevation, it's all metal. But once you get into these remote villages, then it's a kacha road, but two cars can drive on most of them. It's many things that we used to see in tea in the old days. But here it is up at 12 and 13,000 feet. It's an amazing thing. So a village of 5 houses, which is okay, has a road which services it all the way from the main metal road right up to the village itself. And of course, the mountains here, there's snow-fed streams and rivers flowing down throughout Ladakh. Approximately 200 leopards live in the Ule conservation area, which forms a part of the larger Hennis National Park. This is the village of Ule. 5 homes separated by 1 or 2 kilometers from each other, the oldest of which were built 200 or 300 years ago. And it's difficult to imagine that because that's the older portion of the house that you can see in the back. This is the snow leopard lodge largely for foreigners because it's quite expensive to go and stay there. And that's another home which has got a snow leopard lodge there. And the other village homes are somewhere far up there, and it's spread, as I said, only 5 homes. Nowadays, each one of these homes only has 2 or 3 of the older residents living there. And the younger generation, they've left home for education and jobs and stay away, attracted by the bright lights of the changing world outside. This is a picture of a Buddhist totem in the heart of Ule. It's built as memorials and contain religious relics to ward off the evil eye. It's very much a part of Buddhist thought. The homestay where we lived for a week is to the right. Lots of snow when we were there in February. The original building, the one at the back, was erected on the ancestral property maybe 200 years ago. When we were in Ule in the second half of February, as I mentioned, the daytime temperatures were at around -10, -9, 10, 11. When it was clear weather and the sun was out. Night temperatures are minus 18. So you didn't really go out for any late night walks. Lovely fireplaces in the rooms itself. You stayed firmly below the design. This is a picture of Ule at dawn. The glow lighting up the village from the east. We were greeted every morning in this village by a family of chukar, hill partridges, which came visiting to feed on the grain spilled on the ground for the farm animals. That's a picture which I stole from a book, but because my own shot of the chukar, the less said the better. This is a prayer room in one of the other houses in Ule, and where there's only an old lady living at the moment. But this is a mural painted over 300 years ago. And here these colors are absolutely bright. There's another view of the same room. It's got stories from the life of the Buddha, and absolutely beautiful. The whole house is actually made of wood, stone, and our gracious hostess in our homestay was Dolmaji, always cheerful, looking after the housework with her 2 cats who were waiting to be fed. They were always waiting to be fed throughout the day and evening. Her day starts at 4 a.m. in all weather conditions, because she has to feed the sheep, goats and zongs, let them out to graze, get them back into their secure enclosures in the basement of their home to keep them safe from predators, the wolves and wild dogs and the odd geriatric snow leopard who has to come here to look at her livestock. Cooking chores are shared with her husband Norbu, who is a senior member of the intricate web of trackers and spotters who follow movements of animals in the mountains. Their son, Morup, who I mentioned earlier, attended college in Delhi and then chose to return home and is an accomplished photographer in his own right. He's in his late 20s at the moment. Dolmaji was horrified that Brinda and I didn't own any agricultural land or even any livestock. She couldn't believe it. In her eyes, we were truly very poor people. The comically hairy sheep and goats and the bulky zongs and blows, a crossbreed from yak and cattle, give the household milk. Their fleece, shorn in the summer, is sent to lay for cleaning, and then they use it at home for making rugs and blankets and in creating needle-felted toys which are for sale for snow leopard tourists. A truly 100% sustainable life. And this is a needle-felted snow leopard, which was made by Brinda actually, who was helped by Dolma and by Norbu, who himself is a truly skilled needle-felting artist. In a brief summer of 3 months, starting from July, Ule springs to life with green fields and wildflowers. It's unrecognizable from what we saw when we were there. So Dolmana family grow barley, black peas, wheat, potatoes, green and root vegetables, which they harvest, dry and store, and seize them and their livestock through the 6 months of a bitterly cold winter. Across otherwise barren, this is the flowers in Ule. But as I said, across you can see the landscape hasn't changed. It's still that brown, ostensibly lifeless land here. But across Ladakh, this is a picture that you see in summer, and which I'm really thankful to Shujoy for allowing me to do that. And that, I think, a lot of the shot this year itself, Shujoy?
This was some years back.
Okay. They look as fresh as they were made today. And there's such a variety, so much color, all different colors, and you can see intrepid trekkers in the background. You don't really need to go up to the Valley of Flowers because it's there across the Himalayas everywhere. You just have to find them. And it's not only flowers, and maybe here there are obviously lichens and it's going at the higher altitudes. sun and moisture from snow melt creates a very different picture in the dark, as you can see. And now, the snow leopard on a ridge above Ule, taken on a camera shot. I can assure you that no photographer would get that close to it. The male is a solitary animal for most of its life, spent moving from one valley to another across the cascading mountain ranges. The female usually gives birth to 2 cubs, looks after them for 2 years until they have learned to hunt. She then leaves them to fend for themselves, finds a new mate, and starts another family. Life expectancy in the wild is around 15 years. The physical range of a male leopard is almost double that of a female, constricted as she is by the serious business of bringing up cubs. Here's another snow leopard taken on a ridge in the high mountains. He's looking back at the camera trap. He heard the noise of the camera trap. He's looking over his shoulder and saying, "Wow, who's up here with me?" The snow leopard's food consists of the animals that live at these altitudes, primarily ibex and the Ladakhi urial. So here is the ibex at that altitude, as you can see, it looks as if he's on the same ridge, but he's not actually. He's standing out there, magnificent horns. And these are hunted for as trophy items right across the Himalayas, right from Afghanistan down to Nepal. In the summer months, the leopards follow their prey because the prey moved on to the lower valleys to get the fresh green grass that is growing there. That short period of in which everything grows. Here's a picture of an ibex family in the winter, and this is the kind of conditions they have to contend with to stay alive. So all the tracks as they walk up and down, and these valleys get steeper and steeper to the top, and there's normally a leopard hoping to catch them in sight, but they all run extremely fast. They're almost as fast as the leopard is, and really difficult getting something in his jaws. This is a picture of the females and the kids on a cliffside. Ideal place to keep an eye on anybody trying to creep up on them. But again, a lovely shot. They blend into the background, really nice. And then the Ladakhi urial, which has got a different horn altogether. That is a magnificent animal. All of these are extremely suspicious of human beings. They will not let you come within half a kilometer of them. So you're really lucky. So he's standing on the few rocks on snow. You can see how the slope is going upwards from there. And this is a typical snow leopard territory. So actually this is a trick slide because I want to know if you can spot the 3 leopards in the picture.
You're kidding.
So, peel your eyeballs. And I'll give you a hint, all 3 of them are sitting together, so you should be. It's a mother and her 2 cubs. Okay, we go to the next page. So there is the cubs. Middle of the photograph. I'll go back to the first one. So she's there at the center, but she blended into it. And this is a magnified picture, so when it goes back, you'll never be able to see it. It looks like an act from 2 kilometers away. So, and this is an award-winning photograph taken by
same mother and cubs.
3 snow leopards. I don't know if it's the same mother, but we'll say this is the same mother. They're sitting on a rock in the snowfield, watching with intense curiosity Imran and Sonam, who took this amazing picture. It had taken them 3 hours of strenuous trekking up and down steep hillsides with their heavy equipment. They carry all their equipment with them. And Imran, particularly since he's a filmmaker, the equipment is actually mammoth. To carry that up and chase something which is maybe there or may not be there in poor weather and declining light. When they came around a corner, the 3 animals suddenly materialized in front of them as they rounded the ridge. and as dusk was falling. So snow leopards are not afraid of human beings. Just they have learned to avoid us. And as long as they can see them, they are not scared. So they're looking clearly. All 6 pairs of eyes are looking directly at the camera. They know exactly where they are half a kilometer away. They're not just on the corner of the area. And Imran told me that if the animals lost sight of for them even for 1 second, they will all disappear. You will got off that rock and you want to see them again after that.
Vivek, you have 5 to 7 minutes.
I've only got 2 minutes left.
Okay.
So this was my last slide, but I added one slide after this actually, which is Om Mane Padme Hum, which is the prayer that echoes across Ladakh and of course on both sides of the Himalayas. And we see the prayer flags flying at mountain passes and promontories. Prayers inscribed on the flags spread their message of peace and goodwill to the 4 corners of the earth, born on the wings of the winds that blow all day and all night. So this is us bidding farewell to Ladakh and a trip to remember.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I'll just finish over.
Sure.
One huge learning is that with the onset of snow leopard tourism, the loss of livestock to leopards is no longer regarded as a reason to trap or kill the animals. The villagers are being able to earn a good living in the winter when there is no income by staying in the region as spotters or running homestays, both of which are lucrative opportunities. Imagine being paid to stay at home here, doing something you're good at and love doing. Thank you.
That's going to be a hard act to follow, Dr. Shandip Chatterjee. Rakesh, can you give us a hand with setting up the other stuff?
Okay, I'm.
May I just introduce the title of the talk, which blew my mind, and it's a wonderful segue to the next one by Molloy Red. So, Dr. Shandip Chatterjee is a huge traveler. He's got stardust on his feet, and his lovely wife Uttara, who is here, will stand proof to that. I think will agree to that, and she's gone on many of the travels with him. His talk he's conceptualized for us today is how air, light, and water affect the behavior of animals. Am I close to being right?
We'll see.
Okay, we'll see. That's good.
Okay, I'm going to tell you 2 things. I'm not going to use a microphone because it's difficult to have something in your hand and speak. And I'm generally used to speaking to 150 students without a microphone, so I think I will be audible in the back room. The second thing is I'm not a photographer. I'm afraid I spend my life operating on people's brains and spines. I am not in any way talented in the art of photography like my classmate Shujoy Das, whose photographs we ended the last talk with. And while I do neurosurgery for a livelihood, I do photography for my life. And therefore, I just use this as a mode of relaxation rather than anything else. And I told Julie that I'm no big photographer. Don't invite me to a collegium of talented photographers. But those who know Julie would know that it is very difficult to ever get your opinion over hers. And so that's why I'm here. But I thought I'd divide the talk into 2 parts. And the first part, and I take about 25 minutes, is that right, Julie?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So the first half will be photographs that we see, and you have to excuse me, I've been a professor of neurosurgery for 20 years. The first half will be photographs that you perceive with your right brain. So the right brain looks at visuals, looks at things that are flashy, exciting, attractive, and then when you want to put a story to it, when you try to put reason to it, explanation to it, associate it with other things you see, then you have to put electric currents across the middle of your brain and go to your left brain. So the first half will be photographs that you perceive with your right brain, and the second half will be photographs you perceive with your left brain, if you will excuse the neurological jargon. And I thought that I will start by telling you that the right brain perceives of nature the way nature wants to be perceived, which is a combination of three things: light, air, and water, in different proportions put together. And I will be very quick because as I have no big stories, I have no prepared talk, and I haven't prepared a text for these pictures either. But I thought I'd just share with you the combination of light and water and the impressions it could create in the minds of these people in the Sundarbans coming back from work at the end of the day, or coming back like this in the boat when the sun is about to set, and they all need to get back home before the tigers are out on the prowl. Sometimes the combination of air, water, and lights can be spectacular, as this photograph I took from Ross Island in the Andamans in Port Blair. And of course, refraction is a physical phenomenon that the photographer can use to his delight, though he has no great prowess to do this. But the thing is that you need to just have your right brain looking at the right part of the world so that you can see it when it happens. And this happens all around us. It's just we don't have time to perceive it. And this is another shot of, again, the rising sun. The rising sun, as Shujoy Das will tell you, is nowhere more spectacular than in the mountains. And of course, the colors that the same sun produces by that, again, act of filtering through the air to land on water which is now frozen, can produce different hues as you look at Kanchenjunga from different parts at different times of the sunrise. And as the sun continues to rise, the colors change. And there is nothing more soothing to your right brain and to your brain as a whole than to look at this. And the moment you look at this and you think of this and you try to remember this, it goes to your left brain. And there are times you can close your eyes and look at this without your eyes open, because now you got an imprint in your left brain. So the photographer really tries to get everything from your right brain across the midline to the left and leave a permanent imprint in a certain part of the left brain we call the temporal lobe. And that's what this photograph is intended to do. Like this one, again on Kanchan, same place, just half an hour later, taken through the same lens at the same point. But you see how nature gives you an opportunity to show her true colors, as it were, and the pun is not intended. And you see how the colors change. And of course, sometimes even during the middle of the day, and I put in Ladakh, this is at 16,000 feet. And even when the sun is high up in the air, the sun and the air and the water with frozen ice can leave an absolutely indelible mark in your mind when you see this photograph. And when you're going through that unhappy situation at home or in office or at work, I always say sometimes you can close your eyes and remember this photograph imprinted in your brain, and it just makes everything worthwhile from that point onwards. And here's another one taken around the same place, again at around 17,000 feet up in the Ladakh mountains. This is Karakoram. We've moved a little further north from the Ladakh mountains. And I found the Karakoram mountains particularly spectacular during the afternoon sun, which tends to produce so many beautiful colors. And again, as I said, the combination is again air, water, and light. Just different proportions that light up different parts of your memory. and the relaxation that you get when you look at a picture like this. And you think nature has actually used her paintbrush in the bottom of that picture to paint something on to those mountains. And this is again Karakoram. This is just to show you that my saturation at that point was 92%. And this is something that unfortunately we doctors carry with us when we go up to the mountains. A small device with which you become very familiar during the COVID times called the pulse oximeter. And that's the sort of saturation that we had at that time. Of course, those of us that are used to going to the mountains like Shujoy would probably show 100 at that 17,000.
92 is very good at that height. It's very good.
But for me, it was 92. And sometimes, again, the water, air, and light make you wonder which is the real mountain and which is its reflection. And this is again taken in Ladakh, and I think Shujoy will be familiar with this valley. But I found this very nice because it was so beautifully symmetrical. And although, you know, when you do a course in photography, they tell you that you must never have something going through the middle of the photograph, like the horizon, for example. The temptation to do this was intense because it seemed that nature had a perpendicular bisector going through the middle of that frame and was trying to tell you that you didn't know which was the right side up. And in fact, you could put this photograph the other way up and nobody would know whether you had got it the right way up or not. Sometimes you can take photographs that look like bright daylight. This is shot at 1 a.m. 100 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle in an uninhabited part of Norway beyond the last inhabited city in the northern hemisphere. And this is actually taken to see the stars of the northern hemisphere. You know, this is something I took because I use this in my medical lectures, because you know the first vertebra that we have in our neck is called the atlas. And it is based on a misconception that Atlas in Greek mythology was asked to hold the world on his head, which he was never asked, because Zeus asked him to go to the North Pole and hold the stars of the Northern Hemisphere in his hand, not even on his head. So these are the stars of the Northern Hemisphere I took to show my students what actually Atlas was asked to do by Zeus in Greek mythology. But if you waited here, so this is obviously, you can see, taken with a beam. If you want to see what happened, and half an hour later, the temperature at that time was minus 31 degrees, and I'm 6 foot 1.5 inches. I was still just beyond my knees into the snow. And when I was taking the photograph, our guide, who was a very pleasant lady who was also driving the vehicle, said to me, you know, we have a little hole in the gloves for the shutter. And she said you can put your finger out of that, but after 3 minutes, if your finger falls off, you will not know, and I'm not responsible. So this is the next photograph of the globe. And again, that's a mixture of light, air, and water. The northern lights, the aurora borealis, something that you see and you can never forget. It's an unbelievable display of colors that nature sometimes paints on the horizon to make you understand how small we are compared to what happens in the world beyond. And this is at 1:30 a.m.
Is this at Norway as well?
Yes, this is the same place in Norway. So the second half, I thought we'd go a little bit to the left hemisphere, because too much of the right hemisphere can be too damning for the brain. And maybe I'll share with you some creatures that I have had an opportunity to photograph. I have to say that I have been very fortunate that I have been very close to a few principal chief conservator of forests in this state. And I also have been fortunate to operate on 2 of them before they reached their designation. And therefore, somehow, for no qualification of mine, I was made an honorary wildlife warden by the governor of this state, and therefore given permission to go inside the interior of Sundarbans. As you know, there are 3 areas in Sundarbans: the tourist area, the buffer zone, the 2 zones you can go to, and then is the core area where nobody is allowed, and finally now we have the UNESCO Heritage Site, which absolutely nobody is allowed. And I will share with you some photographs taken from the UNESCO Heritage Site that we had a chance to visit. And this is one. And this is not something you can go to Sundarbans every day and see, but you know, they like water, and they drink salt water, contrary to a lot of people think that they go and look for sweet water. They don't. This is very much salt water. And this is on the beach. There's a big story about this beach as well. But you know, just to show you how they enjoy swimming, very much like your Labrador or your Alsatian does, only you don't allow them to get into your bathtub. And Sundarbans, of course, as you know, is an amazing place. I won't talk too much about it, but this was probably the best one I could ever of this creature jumping up. And the reason why he jumped up was because our speedboat suddenly turned a corner, and we had 3 speedboats and made a noise, and he wasn't happy at that noise at all, and decided he needed to dart out of the water and go into the island. This is not Sundarbans. This is my girlfriend, and I dare say she is in presence of my wife. Her name is Maya, and she lives in Tadoba. And those of you that have been to Tadoba would know Maya when you see Maya, because there is only one Maya in India at the present moment, and she's the most beautiful lady that inhabits our tiger reserves currently. But she's like that. She loves to show a little bit of herself and then hide and disappear. And this is another of her friends. In fact, this was the one man who was mating her at that time. I always say, to take photographs of tigers and children, you must not have the camera looking down on the animal. You have to lower the camera down to the ground level, at the risk of it being eaten up, which it won't be, because it doesn't have a smell, and we're not interested in anything that does not have a smell of a living creature. But if you lower it down and take it on with a remote, you get a picture like this, which you cannot get when you're on your Jeep and looking down on the animals, which we too often do. And we often miss the camaraderie and the love that percolates to the tiger family, very much similar to 2 siblings we could have at home. And these are sub-adults who were just less than a year old, and we managed to see them again in the parks in Tadoba. But you know, I've been involved with these tiger issues, and I hate to tell you the way we've been treating our tigers in this country. And we have a lady sitting just in front of me who's very vocal, unlike me, and who's of course heard much more because A, she's a lady, and because she's vocal, unlike me, is that we maltreat our tigers. And I'm going to tell you the most amazing encounter I've had with a tiger in the Sundarbans occurred on the 31st of December, 2014. And quite often we used to go to Sundarbans to spend our New Year's Eve in a forest in the Sundarbans, because that's the place you could have the quietest New Year Eve in the world. And on New Year's Day, my son, who was then 10 or 12 years old, told the principal chief conservator of forest, "This is so bloody boring, these big boats that we stay on which travel at 10 kilometers per hour. Why can't we have a faster boat and go somewhere?" So just as it happens when you talk to a bureaucrat, we had a breakfast arranged on an island which was in the UNESCO Heritage Site, and we had 4 speedboats to take us there. Except that when we got onto the speedboat, a news came that in a village, a tigress had strayed into the forest and attacked a 7-year-old girl, and the villagers, about 350 of them, had surrounded the tigress. So we had with us one person with a gun, which has ketamine. Ketamine is a drug that we surgeons often use when we give anesthesia to patients for short operations, or anesthetists use. It's a terrible drug. You're not allowed to use it in children because it gives you nightmares. It's the only drug that we use to tranquilize animals in this country. It is forbidden in many countries in the world to tranquilize animals with ketamine. It's the only thing available in this country. So this man had a ketamine gun. He was accompanying us because we were going to an island where there could have been tigers around. Instead, he was sent to this village to tranquilize the tigress and rescue her from the wrath of the villagers. And ultimately, to cut a very long story short, he stood at the edge of an embankment, and a very primitive way that we tranquilize our tigers is 4 people from the forest department hold up a wire netting. And the man with the gun stands behind and shoots the tigress ostensibly so the tigress cannot see who shot her. Now, you know that it is very easy for any woman to know who's attacking her, whether you have a wire netting or not, and whether it's human or tiger. And therefore, Julie knows, and therefore, what happened thereafter was when he shot the tigress didn't seem to have any effect. The gun and the shot didn't have an effect, and the tigress got up, and he was almost certain that he hadn't hit the tigress. 400 people on an embankment, the tigress gets up, singles out the single man with the gun and rushes straight at him. The forest officers with the wire netting just drop it and run for their lives. The villagers scatter helter-skelter. The tigress goes and lands straight on this man with the gun. If you have a gun and you have a 14.5-foot Bengal tiger leaping at you, you would pull the trigger a second time, even if you shot ketamine first. That's what he did. Both of them end up in the water, in the river, because he's at the edge of the embankment. Half his quadriceps on the right side is gone when he's in the water. But the tigress cannot attack him in the water because she needs her limbs to swim, and therefore abandons him and goes off to the shore, but unfortunately has had 2 ketamine injections and therefore becomes fairly unconscious thereafter. This is the 1st of January. All the television channels around showing the merrymaking in the Sundarbans. They start broadcasting that a forest officer has shot dead a Bengal tiger with his gun. And 15 minutes later, a phone call comes to our boat from the office of the Chief Minister, who wishes to speak to the Principal Chief Conservator of Forest to verify whether one of his officers of Project Tiger has shot dead a Bengal tiger. So he says, no, that's not happened, the tigress is tranquilized, and we're getting sorted out, and the Chief Minister's advice is, can you please make sure the vet at least comes and examines the tiger? And so the vet is phoned. He's in Waldorf on Park Street, celebrating New Year's Day lunch with his family.
What office here now?
Yeah, so he was on Park Street at that time. This is not the current Chief Minister as well. And so, here we have a situation where we have all these television channels looking at the tigers. The Principal Chief Conservator has let out a statement with the Forest Department saying that the vet will examine the tiger, and there is no vet within 7.5 hours traveling time of where we are. So guess what? For the first time ever in my life, I had to examine the conscious level and brain function of a Bengal tiger. And this is how the tigress was bought, on a boat next to our boat. And I had to do a skillful jumping act from our boat to the top of that boat, while my wife seated here was hysterical, saying this is a very stupid thing to do. And I had to poke this tigress standing on the top of the cage. You see, I was told you can't stand on the side of the cage because the tigress sees you, she will just get up and attack. And if she attacks, she'll hit her head against the side of the cage and injure herself. So you have to stand on top of the cage. And I'm not exactly very light, and I was very concerned that the top of the cage might just collapse onto the tigress. But I had to stand there and examine this tigress. And this is the first and last time I've ever looked at brain function in a tigress. This is a different tiger. And I'm showing you this tiger to show you how cruel is the process that we use to put collars on our tigers when we radio collar them. Again, ketamine. You look at how she's completely knocked out to have that collar put in. And even worse, after that, they want her off the boat. She's drugged, poor thing. And they want to jump off there. You know, now they don't release them on islands. Because before they used to release them on islands, there have been 4 incidents where the tiger turned around and jumped up on top of the boat and attacked the man who pulled up the cage. So they look at her, she can't stand the poor thing. She's half anesthetized, and they want her off that boat. And I'm just showing you the way we treat our animals, because I told you this is the left brain part of the talk. But this is how we treat our animals. And she looks at the water and she doesn't think she's fit enough to do that jump. And it's all about almost 8 feet into that water. It's very shallow, but it's still 8 feet. And she's not prepared to jump. So they put hot water on her from the back so that she's forced to jump out of that boat. And look at the poor thing, what she does there. She has no choice, but she can't stand. This video had to be taken by having a camera in my pocket and my pretending not to have anything in my hands, because the forest officials were not very keen that this be photographed. But I thought, you know, this is terrible, and she can't get up, she can't walk. Look at her. And all we want is that radio collar in her neck for the ostensible reason of trying to locate where this tigress is going to be in the Sundarbans. You know, she can't stand. She can't walk. And an animal as majestic as that, reduced to this because she's got an anesthetic on board and she's dumped into the water. And I'm just going to tell you, show you in contrast, this is what they look like when you have a fully fit tigress jumping up ashore. So, you know, there's a big difference between a healthy animal running up that shore into the forest and a ketamine tigers. But tigers are amazing creatures. They don't like us. This is Ranthambore, but they don't like us. And the children particularly detest cameras. But the good thing about it is when they detest cameras, they look directly at the camera lens. And that provides you an amazing opportunity to photograph these little tigers. And I'll share with you the last video of the Sundarbans, because this is what I always say. Be prepared for amazing things that happen out of books. And this is another tigress being released in the wild. And this was because she strayed into human habitat. Just a little last 5 minutes out of Sundarbans and into a neighboring continent. I find it intriguing, conflict amongst animals, because unlike the Homo sapiens, animals attack each other with no intent to harm each other, and unlike our species, never attack each other without provocation. So we were just recently swimming in the Maldives seas 3 weeks ago with tiger sharks. And one of my trainees said to me, you actually paid money to go and swim with tiger sharks. They're the second most dangerous sharks in the world. But of course, they never attack without provocation, so you can happily swim with them. They're not human beings. They don't attack you for no reason at all. So this is just a few photographs I took. As I said, I'm not a very talented photographer, but I love birds. And here's this little bird, and you know this is an African roller. And of course, you look at the way their expressions change when they're sitting and when they're flying, and how it changes even more as they fly faster. And I could not resist the temptation of taking this roller in its various stages of flight, just to show you how its facial expression changed from one to
We saw these.
Talking of facial expression, of course, there is nothing like this lizard. And I actually had to get into a ditch to be able to get this lizard from below upwards. Again, as I said, it would not be the same if I took it from above downwards. But it changes its color, and it looks very aggressive. And this is just my last few slides, the faces that I like to remember. Faces of people that have looked at me, not been happy with me, and people that have been in conflict. And I'm going to end with one of nature's amazing conflicts that occur, as you know, every year. And of course,
The migration.
that's the migration
The wildebeest.
of the wildebeest.
Crocodiles.
And I'm sorry.
They cross the
Okay, I'm going to share with you the few things about the migration. So this is the migration. And you know, you can go every day for 2 weeks, and these creatures go up to the Mara River and then decide they won't cross. And people spend lakhs of rupees to go down to the Mara to watch the migration. But they just don't cross. They go up to the river, they stay there for 4 hours while you're there sweating it out, and then they turn around and walk back. And you might wonder for what ostensible reason they decide not to cross. And then on the very third day that we were there, they decided to cross.
Why?
But crossing
Fantastic.
is an amazing thing. And I'm going to share with you the last bit of video I have of the crossing. And you know, people spend lakhs of rupees to go there, as I said. We knew people who'd spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks to film or to see the migration, but didn't see it because all they saw was the zebras and wildebeest coming to the edge of the river and going back. And we were fortunate one day at 7:30 a.m. when we were on the banks of the river Mara, we got a message that they started crossing. It took us 10 minutes to get to a vantage point where we could see. And in 2 hours, they suggested to us that 40,000 animals had crossed that river. 2.5 hours later, this is the last bit I'm allowed to film, because my dear wife, who's seated in here, said to me, I refuse to watch this anymore. Imagine refusing to watch the migration anymore and saying, we've had it. And she had her sister who was even more vociferous. We are not watching this anymore. 2.5 hours we've watched this. We're not prepared to watch this anymore. And this is the last scene they witnessed before this. Forced me to leave the place and go away. And you see them crossing, and you see those crocodiles. They're jumping over the crocodiles as they cross. And of course the crocodile is smart. The crocodile looks for a nice small wildebeest that can't jump over it. And gets over it. So when my wife said she's watched this for 2.5 hours, she said, cannot watch these babies being caught by crocodiles, their mothers coming, standing and walking away, or the lions on the other side grabbing hold of them, and the mothers come, they just stand, watch their baby, and then go away. This is the law of nature, and they cannot do anything about it. And you can see that. And as Uttara always said to me, I would have watched if it was a sudden death. But it's a slow, painful death, and we can't watch this for hour after hour. So I must have set up a record of being the first person who got a chance to see the migration and film it, who halfway moved away from filming. But we managed to do something amazing, which shows you how complex nature's balance is. Because just after that, we went upstream. Remember, she didn't want to see the migration, so we went upstream. And who do we see upstream? We see Mr. Crocodile, whose tummy is filled with a wildebeest, who's got another one, because there's so many. So he's got another one, which is preserving for the weekend. And who would like to walk across the river at that point, except baby hippo accompanied by mother hippo? Confirmed vegetarians, not only on Saturdays, every day of the week. And then you see what this baby hippo does. Just to assert her right as a hippo, who in nature's balance is bigger and stronger than a crocodile when she has her mother close to her. She takes that wildebeest in her mouth. This baby wildebeest is in the mouth of that little hippo on the right. Watch it. And that huge crocodile, who's eaten one and was going to have this for the weekend, just has to stand and watch. And I thought the crocodile was going to attack the baby hippo at this stage. And our guide said, don't worry, because if he does, the mother will step on his head And there is no combat between a hippo and a crocodile because the hippo just stands on the crocodile's head. So there's the baby playing with that wildebeest in his mouth, a vegetarian playing with a dead piece of animal. Can you believe it? And the crocodile comes to take it, and he just takes it out of his mouth. Because his mother is there, and between the two of them, look at how he teases the crocodile. And again, this is just unbelievable footage we got, thanks to my wife telling us we had to get away from the migration. But you see, and then the mother says, enough is enough. You've played enough with the crocodile. Don't risk too much. So there, the baby is then forced to abandon and go with the mother. But you see how he plays with the he's a vegetarian. I mean, most vegetarians wouldn't put meat in their mouths, would they? And the crocodile at last gets back her deserving. So I end with the last
Wonderful. Shondeep, you've got most of us speechless. Absolutely amazing footage, and the commentary was exactly your signature style. So after this, we have our last speaker. We're all waiting to hear from him. He's the one who's published in an elsewhere place, Mr. Malloy Kumar Roy. And this has been a jinxed appearance because the last time we had a program for Malaida, who grew up in Hazaribagh in the 50s and the 60s, and wrote this book about reminiscing his connections and his encounters with the wild, actually underlines the indigenes, the real people of the Chota Nagpur Plateau. And I think that's what is mesmerizing. Our library has a copy of his book, so do go ahead and read it. Malaida, you're the only one who's going to tell us in words what has been painted in pictures by Shondeep and Vivek. So here you go. Would you like to? Yes, of course you might sit down. And can we have the lights on? Sure. I'll just put them on. Thank you, Harish.
First, a big thank you to Judy and the Library Committee for asking me to speak on my memories of Hazaribagh and my encounters with wildlife in Hazaribagh. Now, after seeing these two beautiful presentations, I must admit I am a little diffident about my own. For one thing, there are no visuals. I'm speaking entirely of my memories of a time which is long gone, more than 60 years ago. And that was when I then came to Calcutta. And the lack of visuals is a big handicap. But I'll try and do my best to bring the experiences close to you as I possibly can. I lived in Hazaribagh from the early 50s for 10 years. And I remember it as a place where the landscape, the land, the people, the wildlife, they all existed in easy balance. It was a time, it was a place from quite another time. A place of innocence, I think, and wonder, as I see it now, looking back. But first, let me say that I have never been an expert on wildlife, never. I was only a boy with wondrous moments of interaction with wildlife in Hazaribagh. Wildlife, it was plentiful at that time. And wildlife that I'm speaking about are basically anecdotal. I'm only going to share some incidents, no messages of any kind. Sharing of what happened when I met this or that animal at this or that time. Now, let us accept that wildlife derives its meaning only when it is seen in as a part of the larger matrix. And I'm talking about the landscape, the open terrain, which have been the home and the roaming grounds of the wild creatures. And of course, the way they adapt themselves to the changing rhythms and the flow of seasons and the colors of the earth. By colors of the earth, I am talking about the marvelous camouflage that I have been lucky to see. For instance, come winter, the sal trees, the leaves fall on the ground. And that is the time when rabbits camouflage themselves beautifully and quite consciously. They shrink themselves and they expand their ears so that the ears look like a dead leaf. So a jungle cat or a wolf would most likely and hopefully miss it. The colors of the earth have everything to do with the behavior of animals. Now, when I think of my memories going back, I feel the wonderful variety that Hazaribagh had at that time. But before I talk about that, let me talk a little bit about the landscape, the home, as I said, and the hunting ground of the wild animals. Hazaribagh was astonishingly picturesque, astonishingly so. Rolling hills, deep forests of sal and banyan and mahua and tamarind, the stillness of the forest, broken sometimes by the somnolent call of a dove somewhere or the piercing sweet cry of a koel somewhere, and the marvelous quiet of the quietude of the landscape. I had and not only the forest and then you have the meadows and you have the streams and you have the open terrain, what we call kowai, the land breaking down into little canyons. That is abundant in that. Our house was well on the outskirts of the town, facing the Patna-Ranchi highway, and it looked onto endless sisal fields and stands of sal trees. The rear of the house looked across the open country, mustard fields shining like bronze in the winter sunlight, hedgeland, clumps of trees. It really was, and I'm being a little sentimental, but do bear with me, because after all, these are memories, and if I get a little nostalgic, do please bear with me, but these are images which are, I think now, quite amazing that they really were there at that time in their presence. Now, let me talk about the wildlife. My interaction with them were unconscious, almost accidental, and they took in a wide variety of animals, jackals, wolves, hyenas, wild boar, deer, and in one sensational experience, a leopard. Now, tigers and leopards in Hazaribagh are a thing of the past. But at that time, and I'm talking about the 50s and the 60s, you still got to see a few of them. I'll try and give you the feel of what it meant to come across wild creatures, and I'll keep them short. For example, it was one summer evening and my room was at the end of the house, and the back door led out to the garden and the space beyond. And I heard a creature in pain. So I went out, it was evening, I went out, and there it was. An owl, and I don't know what owl, was it a barn owl? I don't know. It had fallen off the branch and it had fallen into a lantana bush and it couldn't get itself out. So very carefully I priced it out, ran my fingers over it to see that there are no thorns. There wouldn't be because lantana thorns are very, very firm, they don't fall off. And I kept it I placed it on the ground. Went back to my room. But the owl insisted in coming with me. And it came into my room. And I was quite amazed that it would do so. It came into my room, flapped its wings, went around and checked out the room, and then sat quietly on the windowsill. It was night, I was turning in to sleep, and it was there. Couple of hours later, I woke up, and my eyes went to the window, and there she was, outlined quite clearly against the window. And in the morning, she had flown away. There was another one. I was walking down a quiet woodland trail, and I came across this deer with her fawn. Now the deer was very startled and looked at me, but she did not give a shrill cry of alarm, and she did not run. She didn't run because she had the cub. What she did, she nosed a little bit ahead of her fawn, looked at me, and then did a strange thing. She made a low, keening sound as if beseeching that she be left alone and the cub not be harmed. It was an absolutely humbling moment. And I saw that, and she was looking at me directly at my face. Very carefully I backed away. And when I turned back to look at her, she was still there looking at me, trying to make sure that I would finally leave. These are little vignettes, Summertime in Hazaribagh, the mohuas are in bloom. Great favorite with the villagers who make toddy out of it, a very sweet fruit, and a favorite with bears. And one afternoon, our gardener, Mali, he took me outside, and there was a mohua tree right across our front garden. And there was this little bear cub. It was a sloth bear. And it was completely soiled by eating the mohua flowers. Completely soiled. It couldn't help itself. Mali took a net. We put the net on it. He looked about and around and at and beyond us, and quite helplessly, and quite unresisting. We took him, put him in the woodshed, and it fell asleep. Next morning, it was mewing like a cat. We gave it some food which we didn't have, but it drank a lot of water. And then it turned his head this way or that, making small purring noises, obviously looking for its mother. And that was very sad to see. But a little later, Mali called me, and there was the mother across the road, standing quietly, making the typical bear call, which is a deep huff, huff, huff call. And she saw the cub, made no motion, waiting for us to take it to her, which we did. But we kept our distance because we did not know how she would react. The cub went into a waddling run, nuzzled the mother nuzzled back. Both of them disappeared into the deep forest. And the other one was what I said, the sensational encounter with the leopard. 2 or 3 day after Lakshmi Puja, I'd come back from school after the film, late moon rising. I opened the gate, and there was this leopard with her cub, and she was lying full stretch on the ground, and she looked annoyed at this intrusion. And I said to myself, more to it, that this is my house, for heaven's sake. I mean, you are the intruder. And she looked at me, turned her head, gave a kind of a half yawn, held the cup lightly on the neck. One bound, she was across the boundary wall and off. That was the only time I have seen a leopard in a Haribol. The one and only time in 10 years. But there was another instance which was not amusing, quite scary actually, and I'd like to read this out from my book, if you permit me. Where is it now? A little way from the eastern boundary of our house was a little stream, and the wild creatures came to drink. Partridges, foxes, rabbits, sometimes a solitary deer, ears bucked for trouble. And I used to love watching them from the shelter of a thick hedge, very close to them. But that afternoon, evening, we saw nothing. I saw nothing at all, not even a squirrel. And was coming back. And then, and let me read it. Yes. The day was ending, and the sun's last rays graced the fields, the dips and hollows already in shadow. Far away, darkness touched the hills, turning them almost indistinguishable and featureless. A flock of herons flew silently by, and there was an extraordinary stillness in the air. Standing there alone, I was aware of a presence, and before I knew what it was right there in front of me, no more than 20 feet away. It was a full-grown wolf. Curiously, and this was the strangest thing, I felt more surprise than fear. The wolf made no threatening move and regarded me steadily, its golden yellow eyes full of intelligence. In the near darkness, the wolf, regal and proud, and I, by now terribly afraid and uncertain, looked at each other in a kind of tableau. It could have been no more than a few seconds, and then the wolf snorted dismissively and was gone. For days afterwards, I wish I could see it one more time, but it never appeared. The terrain behind the house was one of my favorite walks across the fields and thickets, and we came to this place called Canary Hill, which is at Hazaribagh, Bicom. Lovely wooded country, a small hill. And I was there, and it was a pleasure walking through the forest. And it was getting late, so I was walking cross country towards my home, because it was going to be dusk soon. And I was about to clear the woodland to open country on my way home when I knew suddenly that I was in desperate trouble. Approaching me was an adult hyena. I saw at once the threat of its lean, hard body, its vicious eyes, and the way it thrust its long neck forward as it came towards me. And what it was doing was, it would dart at me, go back, circle around, take another angle, trying me out, and trying to find out the best way to get at me. What followed was totally unexpected. Two things happened. From the rim of a depression in the ground close by, something emerged, and the hyena, sensing the intrusion, turned towards it. It was a wolf. Was it the wolf that I had come across earlier? Was it another? I could not tell, conscious only of my fear. What followed was totally unexpected. Without any kind of warning, the wolf went straight for the hyena. In a moment, it had the hyena on the ground, giving it a mauling. The sounds were distinctive. The wolf growling savagely all the while, and the hyena screeching in panic. The hyena wasn't fighting back. All it was trying to do was twist away, which it finally did. It ran, its body showing ugly gashes. The wolf did not chase it. Ignoring me completely, it rolled back the way it came. And in gratitude, I named him Bahadur. I thought the wolf was a hero, and I called him Bahadur. One evening late in October, I was in a front garden. In the closing darkness, I felt something moving across our gate. I unconsciously visualized Bahadur, my wolf and savior. I hurried outside to check. All was silent, and I could see nothing. Only the dim bulk of the surrounding trees. Somewhere from a distance, an owl hooted mournfully. A drongo swooped long and disappeared into the darkness. A night heron glided by, ghost-like and noiseless. A sudden breeze stirred the leaves, but there was no sign of anything, no sign of any other life, no Bahadur. I walked back to the house, sad in knowing I would never see it again. These are images which I now look back with a sense of wonder and gratitude that this actually happened, that I was actually witness to them.
Wonderful, absolutely.
And the last bit, if you would excuse me.
Quick one, Monica, because I think
very quick. Hazaribagh is no longer as pristine as it used to be. The animals are not as plentifully visible, staying deep inside the national forest. And this is sad to see, this is sad to know. And in a broader context, and at the risk of sounding a little ponderous, may I share with you the words of a wise old man. He was Chief Seattle of the Duwamish tribe, living in the northwest of the USA. And bewildered by the greed of the white man, he gave a speech, and I'm quoting as closely I can remember it. What is man, he said, without the beasts? If all the beasts were gone, man would die from great loneliness of spirit. Because what happens to the beasts also happens to man. All things are connected. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Molaida. Those reminiscences are good to take home. And I think what you said at the end makes a lot of difference. Because at the end of the day, I think we've all learned through the COVID years that we are not really the Anthropocene, but there are other creatures that we have to share the world with. Thank you so much. And this thanks really goes to all of you who attended. I'm very touched that Lata Bajoria, who I think is the biggest example in this city of what biodiversity and the importance of living with animals. There's my friend there next to her, Renu as well. So I'm, for the Bengal Club, on behalf of the library chair, we have Mr. Parthuranjan Dash. Thanks everybody. Thank you, Dr. Shonvi Chatterjee. Thank you, Molaida and Vivek, for those unbelievable pictures both of you showed. So Partha, a quick word of thanks from you would be wonderful.
Yes, I must thank the members and the guests, because we could not find any other room suitable other than this, but frankly we were not expecting so many people. And I promise you that we are looking at converting other rooms into viewing galleries so that Shruti and others can show their slides in a better way. And I can just tell Mr. Roy that we don't have our beasts roaming around in the forest, but with the changing times, we also have our politicians. So,
May I now request Shemunti to please honor the three gentlemen who've given us prize evening. Mr. Molloy Roy. Mr. Vivek Krishna. And the one and only Dr. Shondeep Chatterjee. Thank you. So, you have to negotiate your way.